Right, so let's use Blender to make a fancy slideshow. Now there's lots of slideshow applications out there, but none of them will have the flexibility of Blender. So I actually did one of these the other day and it worked quite well, so let's see if I can do it again. First thing to do is to get rid of our default cube in the center there by pressing X and confirming the deletion. Now I'm going to import my images. Now I'm going to use import images as planes. You may not have that on your software, and the way to get it is quite easy. You're just going to user preferences. Make sure you click on the add-ons tab up there, not editing, not input, but add-ons. And then in the search box at the top left here, just type in images. If I can spell, and you can see you get import export images as planes, and make sure it's ticked and just close it if you want it to be just for this particular thing, but I find it so useful I've got it enabled all the time, and in that case if you want that, hit save user settings. So there we go. So go to file, import images as planes, navigate wherever you've got your pictures that you want to make your slideshow of. Where did I put them? Oh yeah, I made a new. Here we go. These are all the images. They're in no particular order, but if you want to put them in an order, then just put them in that order. They can be PNGs, they can be JPEGs, whatever you like. Now pressing the shift key down, select all of them one by one. A lot of people don't realise you can do this because Blender doesn't use the standard sort of shift and control for multiple selections. Well, it does use shift but not control. So here we go, import images as planes, and you can see what it's done. It's stacked them all up in a row. Now we don't want that for this slideshow. You could use it and put the camera above and move the camera from side to side, which is what I did with the last slideshow I did, but this one's going to be a bit more adventurous than that. So the next thing to do is to come down here and we'll click on this little thing here which looks like 3 dots with a double-ended arrow. It says manipulate center points, object and pose mode only. So we'll make sure that's turned on, and we'll find our handles which are there. Select scale, and we're going to scale it down. You'll notice it doesn't actually scale the objects down, it just scales their positions, which is very interesting. View top, view selected, and we'll continue scaling until it looks like everything's centered, until nothing really moves around too much anymore, which looks like kind of, hang on a minute, I'll just press the shift key which gives me a finer resolution on the mouse. Yeah, that's roughly right, that's okay, that'll do. Now because all these are in the same plane, we can't use the same technique to stack them vertically, and which is okay because I want to stack them in order of size. So let's go and have a look at them from the side. And to start with, I'm just going to move them out because I'm going to have to manually sort these. Whoops, we only want one at a time. And the smallest one wants to be at the bottom, so that's going to be at the bottom. It's going to be somewhere in the middle. It's going to be over the top of that one for sure. That's going to be underneath that one but over that one. You can see what I'm doing, I'm just sorting them vertically but in size. Smaller than that, bigger than that. I'm not worrying too much about the gaps for now because I can come back and regularise those gaps a bit later. That one wants to be moved over a little, I think. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be viewing these from the top, and I'm going to use all sorts of different effects to. These are all nearly the same size, which is good. So about there. And is that all of them? Not quite, very nearly. Of course I could have counted them, which might have been easier, but hey, why make things easy on myself when I can make it difficult? I suspected there might be one more hiding in there somewhere. I think that's it. Right, now we'll go to one side and we'll just regularise this distribution a bit. And correct any cock-ups we've made, if we've made any. And the alignment isn't too critical because we'll be moving the camera around anyway, I expect. I just want to make sure that each picture hides the one behind it. Something like that. And you see we've got a stack of pictures now, which are all in depth order. Now the next thing we have to do is make sure the materials are right, and I'm going to show you how to do the first one, and then after that I'm going to turn it off and do all the others because you don't need to watch me do it, it's very easy. So we go to materials for this first one, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the emit value to 1. That's it, nothing else. I'm just going to go through each one and do that. So you don't really want to watch that, do you? So there we go, I've done that, and now I'm going to select them all using a box select. Just press B, draw a box, and they're all selected. I'm going to go to view top because I don't really need to do this, but for my own peace of mind I'm going to put them roughly in the middle of the scene, and I'm going to then go view selected and align view, align active camera to view. So we've now got our camera actually aligned on there, but it's too far away, so we're in the Z direction, we need to move it. You can see I've got -1. So what we want to do is move our camera hello. Oh, I'm not moving our camera, I'm moving something else. Control Z. Good old Control Z. It's better. -1, which we were before. I need to select the outer edge of the camera to make sure the camera is selected. Make sure it says camera in there. And we want to back away from that a bit, so we're going up until we can just about get the picture in the frame, which is there. If we do a quick trial render, that's the first picture, which is pretty good. Now I want to take the lamp out of the equation because at the moment it's illuminating things. We don't want to do that. I could have turned it to shadeless, but sometimes you get funny things happen with Blender when you do that. So, show hide render view, let's get rid of the lamp. There's one in here somewhere. Delete that. And now you've got to kind of decide as well how many seconds you want each picture to show for. It's going to be 50 frames per second, and that sounds like a lot. It sounds like it's going to be a long render time, but in reality it's so fast to render these photographs, it's unbelievable, so it won't be that bad. Go back to view camera, and that's better. There's no glow up here, you can see that. So that's it. And now what you want to do is, obviously you want to do transitions, and you want a little intro. Well, the only intro I'm going to do is some text, so we'll do that now. And this slideshow is going to be called Strange Pictures of 2014. And so I'm going to add some text and find it. It'll be somewhere buried in the middle of here somewhere. There it is. Go back to view top. There it is. Now obviously that's way too big, so we go into the text format here, and we also want to change the font because Blender's own font is always very obvious. Don't like it. So you find your fonts directory. Now in Unix, that's going to be in USR, share. There's a directory in there called fonts. Where are we? Fonts, there we go. And there's a whole bunch of different fonts here, which go with different applications. You can use any of them. Okay. So let me see what we got. Free fonts. We use free font serif. Bold or not bold? Yeah, bold. What the hell? Open font. You can see now we've got a different font in there, and we want to change the size, obviously, because it's way too big. We don't want it too small, but there we go. And now if we go into edit mode, we can change the text. So strange pics, and then I think I'll put it on a separate line of 2014, and we can change the justification here where it says paragraph, and we can center it, so that's that. Right, so if we go back into object mode, and we can shift it around so that it's actually in our camera frame. We go view camera, and it can be a bit bigger than that, so I'm going to turn the size up. There we go. Now that's going to be the finish point of our text, and I'm going to make it come in and whiz around a bit. So I'm going to decide, well, it's going to be 25 frames, which is 1 second, or 30, just over a second, 30, that sounds good. And I'm going to stop my animation there, so I'm going to insert Lockrot and scale, and then I'm going to take my text. It's going to come in from the top right, and it's going to scale and spin. So I'm going to scale it down. You notice I've taken this now back to the first frame. Can't scale it. Okay, yeah, because it's still text. Right, okay. Something else I need to do then first. I'll give it a material. new material. What colour do I want it to be? I'm going to make it a nice green because the first picture is actually green. Whoops. And I'm going to make it a darker green than that, like so. And I'm going to give it some 3D actually. I'm going to extrude it, which will give it some depth. And a little bit of bevel, I think. No, not that much. Something like that. That looks okay, doesn't it? What does that look like if I render it now? Aha! So I need to give it an emit value in the material, don't I? So it's too much. It's not enough. Maybe it would be a good effect if I gave it some mirror as well. You can see we're getting there. We're getting there. Now I can actually go into the world view here and change some colours, and that might be a good idea. So if I made that as kind of a red, so the world is sort of a reddish colour, then that's going to make the text red because it's reflecting, if you see what I mean. So if we render that now, and that's a bit too red, but I can do that by playing with the materials. I can turn the reflectivity down. It's not red enough, turn it up. That's about right. You can see that's a reasonable looking piece of text. Now when it, excuse me, I hit render animation instead. That's always a bad idea. So on show, hide that. And now what we want to do is we want to convert this text. So object, and we're in here somewhere. Convert to, it's right at the top of our mesh from curve meta circle text is the one you want. And now this can be all scaled and played around with. So it's now a real object as opposed to a piece of text. So if I hit S for scale, I haven't got I've got that still turned on, so turn that off first. Might be a good idea. S for scale. I can scale it right down like that. I'm going to move it off camera, and I'm going to rotate it quite a bit, a couple of different directions. Let's just move it a bit nearer to being on camera than it was. I'm going to now insert location, rotation and scale. And now between there and there it should animate, we can see that happen, it should animate into position like that, and that's how I want it. Then I want it to go away. There's lots of different ways you can make things go away, and I think it might be quite fun to explode this text, so that's what I'm going to do. Just after it comes into view, there, and object, quick effects, quick explode. You can see what happens, it just drops away. Now you can change some of the things on the explode by changing the particle system, and at the moment there's 100 particles. Let's see what it looks like with 500. And there we go, and that will do fine, I think. So that's the text explosion out of the way, and if we come back here we can see that all the bits disappear there, and it's time probably there to go into our next picture, because people will have seen the picture that's underneath here. So what are we going to do? Well, like I said, we can just move things out of the way, and for the first one that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm going to start somewhere around about there, frame 54, and I'm going to insert a location keyframe on that, and over the course of the next few frames I'm going to drop it out of the way, just like that. And I might very well rotate it and move it to one side a bit as well. Why not? Like so. Now as soon as we've done that, we want to add in a location and rotation frame for that object. So there we go. And you see immediately that I forgot to do rotation with the last one, so that's easy enough. Just put all these back to naught. And then press I. There we go. So what we've got, text drops in, explodes, next picture's revealed. And we said 2 seconds, which is 50 frames. And you can do it for longer if you want. Now one technique you can do is to render it in bits. So render the intro, save that file, render each one individually, or you can do it all together. This is going to be done really all together. So where were we? We're here, 65, so the next one, if we have 50 frames on that, that's 115. 114 will do. And for this one, let's do something different. And what we're going to do with that, first of all I'm going to move it over so it's centered. And what I'm going to do with this second picture is I'm going to move it towards the camera. Now this sounds a bit weird, but it will actually go through the camera. So in here, if I insert a location, and I'm not going to do any twisting around this time, and then few frames later. Let's move to behind the camera. Insert location. Let's go back to view camera. And here we go. There we are. So that's that. Then, let's see, it disappears from view about frame 125. So 125 plus 50 is 175. Oh, that was a good guess. Now at this point we discover we need to move the camera in, but because I've already got it at 175, I'm not going to worry about that for the moment. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to explode this picture to show you how that is done. Okay, and so I'm going to select it. Now the first thing I need to do, I need to go into edit mode because it needs a lot more vertices than it's actually got. So I'm going to subdivide it, and then subdivide, subdivide, subdivide. So we've got quite a few vertices, and so now I can go back into object mode and do exactly what I did before. Quick explode, and it's actually going to do what it did before, disappear through the bottom, but I don't want it to do that. I want bits to come out towards the camera. So how do we do that? Well, apart from anything else, I want to turn up the number of particles a bit. So let's go into the particle system settings, and we're going to 550 or something. Fairly, no, they're too small. 400, still too small. 300. It's because the 100 size ones were too big, basically. So that's that. So what I want to do is I want to go down into the field weights. I want to go gravity. Instead of being 1, I want to be minus point, I don't know, 0.6 or something, so they come up towards you. So let's see what that looks like. So it's like that. And I'll turn on rotation, give it some randoms on everything, give it a bit of random phase, give it some quite high velocity, and that will change it again. So that's what we've got at the moment. Right, so now somewhere in here we need to put in a camera move. And where do we want it? Right, so 124, our camera position is okay. So we need to add in a keyframe there, making sure that the camera is in fact what is selected. Okay, camera, and we want to insert a location keyframe, and then 125, we need to change our location. We want to zoom in rather a bit more, and we want to move the camera towards the right. So there's our new camera location. So we can then insert our location keyframe, and what we've just done, we've just moved the camera during one frame so that it lines up accurately with our next image. As you can see, we've then got a little problemette, and we're going to have to zoom in, I think, slowly because of the effect of the fact that you can actually see the picture behind it. So we're going to do the same thing with our camera there. We're going to insert a location keyframe, but this time it's going to take some frames for us to move our camera so that we can enjoy the explosion effect. And I'm going to move it over that many frames. So it's like that. Hover over the location, hit I, which is another way of putting a keyframe in. And then we go 150 frames beyond that, and so on. And this is how you build up a slideshow. Now I'm going to render this as far as we got. I'm going to render it straight to a video file. So let's go in here. I'm going to put it straight on my desktop, like that. Going to be a video file, and I'm doing this just to show you the effects as far as I've got them, and these are the only sort of effects that really I would do for a slideshow. Just explode and moving things about and twisting them. It's probably the best way of doing it. So yeah, so I'm going to add SS onto the end of there for slideshow, and that just gives it a file name really. That's that. So I'm going to render it and then come back and show you what it looks like. You can see what I mean about it being really quick. Right, so a couple of hundred frames, and that took maybe 6 minutes, something like that. So let's see what we've got. And this is going a bit quickly because I'm doing this as a tutorial. I don't want it to take hours. But I'm going to go back in a minute and use the technique of literally rendering each section of the slideshow one at a time, because they're going to be quite long. I want the slides to show here. I've got them showing for 2 seconds. I want to show them for something like 8 seconds before they dissolve. And I'm going to do a few other things as well. And I'm going to show you the modification that I'm going to make to the intro so you get some idea of what I'm doing. And then we'll call it a day for this actual tutorial. So I'm actually going to remove what I've done already, and the way I'm going to do that, and this is how you do it, you go into the graph editor and keyframes, delete keyframes, and you do that for each object, and you can change the objects up here if you want. Some of them won't have obviously keyframes against them. So I'm going to keep my text coming in as it is, but I'm going to get rid of the explode effect. The way you do that is literally to get rid of that modifier and to get rid of the particle system. The reason I'm getting rid of it is it will eventually still explode, but it will explode in a slightly different way, and I want it to smoke a bit first. So let's start smoking when it gets to about there. So I'm going to select my text, object, quick smoke. There we go. It's given me a domain, as you can see. Domain's a bit big actually because it goes beyond the camera, and we're not going to see any smoke that comes beyond the camera. And the smoke is actually going to rise towards the camera, which may sound a bit weird, but that's the way that smoke works. It rises. So, and I don't want it going. See, the thing with smoke simulations, you want to make the domain, which is this box, as small as you can get away with without actually making it look rubbish. I think we're about there. Something like that. Now I don't want any flame, so I'm just going to check that. If I go into physics, you can see it's smoke flow, which is what it should be. Flow source is the mesh, which is fine, and it's just smoke, not flame. That's great, that's exactly what I want. And if I select the domain there, you can see it's a domain. Division's 32, well that's not really high enough. I want 64 as a minimum. And might as well click smoke adaptive domain, which speeds it up a bit, but might not actually do much. We've got high resolution, something like 8 divisions would be good. Noise method FFT slightly better, but slightly slower. We go to smoke cache. Now we need to save the file first. Oh, I'm not going to save it there for reasons of what I'm file, save as, because I'm actually going to use this. I'm not going to use it as a tutorial, so I want to put it in the same directory as the slides, and then at a later date when I archive it, everything will work. There we go. Save as Blender file. Right, now we can use the cache. Now we don't want it to start at 1, do we? We're starting it at the frame we've got there, which is 29. I'm actually going to start it on 28, I think, actually. And it's going to end not at 250, but let's say about 110 or something. And we'll see what that looks like. So there we go, we hit bake. As you can see, we've got our little number there that's going to count up slowly until it's baked, and I'm not going to bother making you watch that number go up slowly until it's baked, so I'll pause it. Right, we've got a camera, we've got some smoke, but at the moment the smoke doesn't look very good because it needs some light on it, and this means I've got to do something again to the material of this picture. So I'm going to hide that, and selecting the picture, I do actually need to make it shadeless now because I'm going to have to introduce some lighting. So there we go. Go back to view camera. Right, now I need to add some lighting, and lighting for smoke is always best coming from this sort of direction. So I'm going to add in a lamp. which is going to be a spot lamp, which won't surprise those of you who've seen my tutorials before. I use spotlights quite extensively. In fact, it's quite rare that I'll use any other lamp type, really. So, lights coming from the camera and to the right. And what I want to do is I want to turn on show cone so I can see, and this doesn't affect the render, it's just simply so you can see what it's illuminating in the actual area of the scene. So there we go. You can see that's a spotlight. Need to move it a bit further away, I think. Like so. And we need it a lot brighter. And what sort of brightness do we want it? Probably around about 4 or 5, I would have thought. It's only a guess, going to have to render it to confirm that. Now I want also a ray shadow, and going to turn the sampling up to maybe 4 or so, soft size up to about 3, just to make the shadows a bit more realistic. Right, so we go back to camera view, render image again. So you can see now our smoke is starting to pick up the light, which is good. And we can play with our smoke domain material. I'm going to stop that rendering for the moment. As you can see, as soon as you've got smoke in there and some light, it does slow down rather a lot. Okay, and I'm going to turn up the reflection brightness and forget the emission, transmission colour. I'm going to make a sort of a browny black, sort of that sort of colour for the moment. We'll render that, see what that starts to look like. As you can see, we're starting to get there. Let's turn this up a bit further. It's a bit too far. Don't forget, this smoke will always look much more convincing when it's moving than it is right now. So that's that. Now we'll look at density. We can turn the density down and see what that does for us. Or we can turn it up. Maybe around the 3 mark. Turn up the out scattering a bit. I'm starting to get more of a smoky sort of effect to it. Maybe we now want the density down a bit. This is a sort of messing around that you typically have to do with smoke to get it to look right. You have to play around with the smoke material quite a lot. And that, I think, will probably do. Now this is a bit too grainy for my liking, and this quite often happens with smoke. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the compositor and I'm going to add a little bit of a blur. So we're using nodes, put backdrop on, add an output viewer so we can see our backdrop, like so. And then we're going to add in a blur filter. And this is going to blur everything, but only by a small amount, just enough to get rid of those horrible speckles which I don't like. So here we go. One thing I can't remember if there's actually a despeckle filter. Let's have a look. There might be. Yes, there is. I had a funny feeling there was. I think I've actually used it before. So maybe rather than blur, I can use this. Let's have a look. See what happens, shall we? Doesn't seem to do a lot. Ah, okay. It's kind of inverted. So that's more the sort of thing that we actually want. So that's pretty good actually, I think. So if we go back and yeah, that's better. Okay, so let's have a look at a couple of others. I mean, here we go, we've got a really dense one, and that's the smoke at about its densest. Then you've got dissipation. Smoke is now dissipating. This will be a bit slower because the volume of smoke is greater, so every single pixel near enough has got to go through the smoke subroutines in the renderer. That's good enough. Right. Let's turn off render. I want to do something with this text here. Let's do something that I haven't done yet. And that could be maybe soft body. I've forgotten whether you can actually, yeah, you can actually do that. So okay, so from 100, let's try this. From 101 to maybe 160, maybe 180 actually. I'm going to make this picture below it an obstacle, so if it hits it, it hits it, and it's going to act as if it's hit a solid, and that will do. And let's bake that and see what happens. So that's done, so let's see what we've got. Now before I do that, I'm going to temporarily move the smoke domain, which contains all the smoke information, onto another layer that's not visible. Otherwise it's going to take forever to cycle through this animation. So I'm going to move it to the second layer, like that. Go back to camera view. And let's see what we have. Well, at the moment all our soft simulator seems to be doing is bouncing it. That's not good enough. I want it wobbly as well. So let's change things a bit, shall we? Where are we? Rigid body, soft body cache, yeah, that's it, free bake. Right, so I've got friction, mass and speed. Reduce the stiffness somewhat. I'm going to make it a lot looser and floppier. Allow it to bend, and to allow a bit of permanent deformation, and we'll see what that does for us. And this is going to go a lot slower, I think. Well, here's the end result of that animation after I've made those changes. It's much more interesting. So let's have a quick look and see what actually happens. As if Blender doesn't crash, of course. No, it's not. You see it kind of squodges. What I want it to do is I want it to disappear, and the best way to get it to disappear really is somewhere before the end to fade out the material. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take it to around about where it is now, frame 160, maybe a bit, no, frame 160 when it finishes roughly squiggling about. And let's do transparency. So 158, I'm going to hover my mouse over there, I'm going to hit the I key, which means that no transparency. Then at 159, I tick it and hit the I key, and shall I use Z transparency or ray trace? Ray trace I think is going to be slower but a lot better. Okay, and at the moment alpha I want up all the way, I want up all the way, and that will make it solid, so it's going to look like it's there. So I'll just say I over that one, I over that one, save those, and then round about here, frame 185, 0, 0, it's going to disappear like that. Simple as that. Okay, so let's choose somewhere in the middle. We'll hit render image. Not far enough along really to see it getting really transparent, so we'll go a bit further along. And for some peculiar reason it's not working, and I know why. It's because we've got the mirror. Okay, so I'm going to hit escape. Now I can't turn the mirror off, otherwise it's going to look weird. What I can do is turn the reflectivity down. So around about here I can hit I, and somewhere around about here there's no reflectivity, hit I again. Now let's try it. Maybe not. Maybe I'm going to need to use mask or Z transparency. Or maybe I'm going the other way and being a complete dimmock. So that's what it looks like at that end. I can't get it to fade. Well, that's not very good, is it? Now, what does this material preview tell me? See, the material preview should change with it. So there we go, we're reflective. We're becoming more transparent, we're becoming more transparent. What happens if I turn the mirror off completely? think it may be that our light is too bad, so I'm just going to have to make it blink off, which is not something I really like, but hey, I'll do it. Having it sort of change at the end before it blinks off is okay. So in order to make it blink off, here I am on frame 182, and I'll find the text in here, which is here. I'm going to make it hover over the camera symbol, hit I, which is visible to the renderer, click on it and hit I again. So one moment it's visible, next moment it isn't. So if I render image there, it's not visible. Render image there, it is visible. And now transparency is doing absolutely nothing, so I'm going to turn it off, which will make life much easier. So I'm going to go back through the keyframes, make sure I overwrite that keyframe, because it will render much faster with no transparency. Like so. Okay, well what I'm going to do is I'm going to render that now. Just see, I've still got the image, yeah. I'm going to render it now up to frame 250, and I'll come back and show you what it looks like, and that's going to be my first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change where it is. I'm going to put it in my presentation directory. So there we go, and that's going to be slide 1. And later on what I'll do is, I know I've got one of these little files for each slide, I'll just go into a video editor and I'll stitch them all together into a slideshow, and then I'll add a soundtrack, whatever I feel like doing. So let's save the file and we'll start rendering. I'll see you shortly. And wouldn't you know, I forgot to do something again. I got part way through and I suddenly realised that I hadn't moved the smoke domain and all the smoky type stuff back into the main picture. So that won't do, so I'm going to have to do that. M for move, put it back, display the layer, and go back and render animation again. Isn't that fun? Alright, so I've rendered that section. Let's see what we've got. Not bad. That'll do. So, that's really the end of this short tutorial that isn't so short, because I ended up doing lots of other things. But I hope you find it useful, and go out and make your slideshows. Thanks very much. Please like and subscribe.